Welcome to another episode of Stitching Tales. I am Johanna Lundström.
And I am Malena Hjerpe.
And in today's episode, we have a new project to reveal, right, Malena?
Yeah!
Yes. I think if you have listened to these podcast episodes before, you have probably heard that we have hinted a couple of times that we have begun to start another project together. And if you're not familiar, last year in November we published our first joint book, which I'm holding in my hand now if you are watching on YouTube, which the book is called Fit for Knit, which is the ultimate guide for how to fit and sew your own clothes. And I've written 4 books so far, 4 sewing books I should say, and the far most pleasant one was the one I made with you.
Oh, that's happy to hear that.
And it wasn't that the other one I did. It wasn't that they were bad co-author, because there weren't any co-author. It was just me. And when I did the book with you, it was such an enjoyable and fun project. And it took us, I think, about 2 years, but it was so worth all the effort and all the way, because it just turned out to be a book that I'm incredibly proud of. And again, it was such an amazing joy to work with you, Malena. And we have casually talked, I should say, about doing another book project, but we haven't really how should I say it, landed on an idea, right? Because we have mentioned it a couple of times. I think, would you agree with me, or were you scared after the first one?
No. I definitely okay, I can do this again. It's just a matter of which idea are you gonna pick from all the things you wanna talk about and write about?
Yeah, it's incredible, right? That even though there are many sewing books out there, and between us we have several sewing books out, but there's still a lot of topics to choose from that isn't essentially covered in the sewing book world, which I find is pretty interesting, because you might think, oh, it's so saturated, there's a new sewing book coming out every year about this topic and that topic. But I think we both had quite a few different ideas on what to do. And I should perhaps talk a little bit about the backstory of this book, so you're going to get a better idea. Then we're going to talk more in detail what it's about, because yes, we're doing another sewing book, which we are very excited to talk more about in this episode. Anyways, in June I got a really bad cold, and I find oftentimes that when I'm forced to rest, it's usually where my creative brain really starts working, because oftentimes in my case I'm quite stressed, which again is something I've addressed in this podcast several times. And when I get overwhelmed, I find it really hard to be really creative. But when I got this cold, I had this inkling that I think a few good things is going to come out of this cold, because I will be forced to bed rest and not really be too much distracted from the outside world. So one very sleepless night, I had this awful cough, and I think it was about 1 or 2 o'clock in the night. I was up, I couldn't sleep, I was coughing, and I don't really exactly remember the train of thought, but what I ended up was something that we both are very passionate about, and we talk about so much, and we also both do sewing patterns on this particular garment. And then I was like, yeah, why not make a book about sewing a perfect t-shirt or a perfect knit top with sewing patterns, because that's something I've not done previously, but I'm very excited about. And I had this idea, the working title should be To a T. So T, then it's a T-E-E, as you spell a t-shirt in slang, I guess you call it in English. So that's why I kind of started the idea. So I was in the middle of the night, I was pinning Pinterest boards with different t-shirt styles that I thought would be interesting. And then I think the next day I messaged you, Malena, and said I have a book idea. So what did you think when I pitched this idea?
I was very excited to hear. And a little backstory. I mean, I've told this before, but when you suggested the previous idea, the Fit for Knit books, my instant reaction was ooh, this is scary. This is I'm scary because it's like I knew there was gonna be a huge commitment, like time-wise commitment. So that was like, ooh, I should like, who do I dare to commit to this? But then also like the business side of me was like, recognize that this is a fear of commitment issue. Basically, it's not a red flag fear like this is a bad thing. Like no, this is just my own fear, and that's the thing. Like you should not say no to that. So I was like, yes, a little bit scared, but yes, I'm in it. But when you told me about this idea, well, like, basically halfway through your explaining your idea, I was like, yeah, I want to hear it all, but when is she going to be done so I can say, yes, you had me, hello, yes, no, like, it's not, yes, absolutely, it's just a question of when are we going to do it? I was like, you had me at hello, no problem, I'm in it, 100%, I'm done, like, yes.
Yeah, that was so. That made me so incredibly excited because you know when you think you're in your own head and you're like, this sounds like a good idea, but oftentimes it's a little bit scary to test it with someone else, especially when I'm asking you to you know go all in on another project like that. So I was so thrilled that you were so excited and also had thought about the similar topic yourself.
yeah, because I've been thinking like you know what should my next pattern be, like how to, and also like work in a smart way, so you're not like creating too much work for yourself. And I was like, I mean, I love t-shirts, I'm very passionate about t-shirts, and I have like a lot of t-shirts in my library that I've been working on basically for own projects, like different projects for myself. And like, wouldn't it be nice to just do different t-shirts, like make several patterns, but then I could use like the same sewing instruction, but also like always the sewing instructions that are like the most like biggest hurdle to tackle and the most time consuming. The pattern making, like that's easy, I can do, no problem. But there's a sewing instruction. It's like, what if you could make several different t-shirts with different silhouettes and just use the same sewing instruction? That would be brilliant. I was like, that's can you do that? And then you presented your book idea. I was like, yep, done. I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's probably the best way to do it, right? Because we could also, of course, release sewing patterns and all that, but the idea behind this book is basically that you get, which we have identified for the four most classic like knit top styles, right? And we did have, because I had two ideas that didn't make the cut, because that's why I love working with you, Malena, because you're really good at like simplifying and streamlining, whereas I tend to go all over the place and want to include everything and then overwork everything. But so we ended up doing a little bit of culling, and you also added a style, which was an excellent choice because it's a style that I don't personally gravitate towards, so I kind of ignored it, not understanding that I'm not the only one buying this book, hopefully. So, and I guess if you're listening now, you might thinking, okay, so what are the different type of t-shirts that we are planning to do with this book, right, Malena? So could you talk a little bit more about the four styles that we are going to include in this book?
Yeah, so we have, you had identified like a few like core silhouettes, basically, with that are very easy to make, easy to also vary and make it your own. So the first one is really tight fitted t-shirt that you make in like a 1x1 rib or 2x2 ribs. So it's like a really stretchy material. And what was it? You had a work name for it.
Yeah.
Snug tee, no?
Close. I think it was Close Hug. I think it was called Close Hug. Yeah. I also made up fancy name because it was in the middle of the night. So I think it was called Close Hug.
Yeah, and it's we made it in like basically a really tight t-shirt, and also with the collar, so you can make like a roller neck version out of it, and also have it with a turtleneck, and a regular neckline as well, of course. So this should be like in a really stretchy material. And then the next one, what was the name for that one? Total Tea, I think.
Total Tea, yeah. Total Tea, yeah.
This is like so the first one obviously has a lot of negative ease, and it should be the fabric is stretched out on your body, and the other one then is a little bit more not relaxed, but like it has like positive ease, so it's bigger compared to your body measurements, and it's just like a regular t-shirt. Like it's that regular t-shirt you could have with anything, wear every day, like so comfortable. It's not tight, so it feels really comfortable when wearing. So that one I'm really I made samples of them, and that one I really like, enjoy wearing.
Yeah, I love that style because it's basically, think like the iconic t-shirt. And what's really good about this one is it's versatile, so it's going to work really well, for instance, with regular cotton jersey without any additional lycra or spandex. You can also use it to make a more sturdy, like a dressier t-shirt, using a slightly heavier jersey. So it's going to be like it can be like a really super casual t-shirt, but also really dressy t-shirt, which is quite popular, at least here in Sweden right now, when you make them on quite stable knits. So you get that beautiful like shape, and so you can wear it to, a more formal occasion or in your office. So that's what I really like about this style as well. It's definitely, and of course we should also say that we're going to do a short sleeve and a long sleeve version of that as well. So that means that you can make it, in two quite different, usages. For instance, a winter tee and a summer tee, maybe. Yeah, and the third one, based on silhouette, that was my suggestion. The thing that is not your cup of tea, but is I love it. A little bit oversized t-shirt. So it's not like super big, but it's has a dropped shoulder, has a bit more width in the body, in the bodies. T-shirts that I basically love to wear. So I was like, well, we have to include a oversized t-shirt. Come on. Yeah, I was like completely ignoring it. Especially it's especially ironic because I do try to keep up with trends, and if you look at least here in Sweden, that oversized t-shirt is absolutely everywhere right now. It's one of the hottest styles, especially the short sleeve version. So you were right on it. I was very happy because otherwise, if I'd done this book myself, I'd just ignore this fact that the oversized t-shirt is probably the hottest style right now in terms of fashion trends.
Yeah, and it's and like the oversize, it can really. I mean, it has been trendy for a long time, and depending on season, a little bit like different types of oversized. But yeah, no, I really like our model. I think we have found a good balance of it. So I really, that's my favorite one. If you can pick your favorite. And the fourth one, that's my, let's just say, not my. I mean, I love to wear it, that's no problem. But making the pattern for it. The raglan. The dreaded raglan t-shirt. And I can say the first sample that I did, really not good. Like, it had so wavy seams, and when you wear, I mean, you can still wear it, but it's like you try to figure out what is the issue, and then the next time that I was gonna work on it, I put the pieces together and was like, what was I thinking when I made the first pattern of this? Like, did I forget everything that I was taught in like my pattern classes? Like, huh? Like, what? So I kind of redid it all.
Yeah, it's definitely. I've seen later samples, and it's definitely a real improvement, and that goes to show also how difficult getting the raglan right, because you have so much experience, and we also address this in our book Fit for Knits, especially how to alter for raglan, because it's really difficult to get great fit with the raglan sleeve, especially if you don't have any darts or shaping like that, any extra sleeve seams. So I was, I totally understand your pain there, because I could see the first sample that it had some struggles. I guess we could say that it was a struggling sample.
Yeah, you said that. Yeah, that ones look like the typical raglan fitted shoe. I was like, yeah, something, yeah.
And we should also say what we are imagining for the raglan. It's definitely has extra ease as well. So you could do it in a sturdier, heavier fabric as well. If you have like a sweatshirt fabric or French terry, so you can definitely do like more of a sweatshirt style. It's not oversized, I should say. It has just good amount of ease, but you could also sew it in a cotton jersey and make it more like a baseball jersey. I think it's called baseball jersey or baseball tee, the classic one where you have contrasting colors on your sleeve and the bodies. So that's the fourth style, and we can identify. I think we would love to know, you listeners, have we missed any iconic styles now? Because again, we're only two people thinking about this right now. But if we are asking you, what are some other styles maybe that you think that we might identify? But I think right now we are pretty set about this because, Malena, you have done amazing work. The patterns are like pretty much done, right? And we should also talk a little bit about sizing as well, because we are expanding on that as well, right? So what is the size range that we are planning to do for this book?
Yeah, so for the European sizes, it's from size 32 to size 60, which is 2 sizes bigger than I have on my own pattern. So really looking forward to the expanded size range. And I think that translates to US 30, I think. I think we looked that up, and a size 60 in European is like 30 in American system. So that was really like a dream that I've been having, like just to say, like the number 30, like I wanted to, achieve that.
Yeah, it's really, and we should also say we go, US, I think size 32 in US sizes is 0, right? So we go from 0 to 30, right?
So.
Yeah. And of course, just a little asterisk there, because we're trying to do the conversion right on the fly in the podcast between the European sizes. But yeah, it's just, I have the same size range as you, Malena. I go up to 56 in my sewing pattern in the European. So it's nice to be able to do that expansion and really offer a good, nice size range as well. And of course, so the book will come with paper patterns that you can trace. And we're definitely going to also offer a digital. So if you get the book, we will also be able to download, copy shop files or projector files, which we talk about a little bit off and on as well, that we're trying to add to our own sewing patterns. At least you have already started, Malena, I should say. And of course, the book will not just be sewing patterns; it's also going to be sewing instruction. And that was such a great division of labor, I think, Malena, because we are able to hone in on our particular skill set. Because we really complement. You have the skills and the tools and everything to do patterns and the grading and everything. Whereas I would say my skill set is basically in instructions and doing illustrations, and I love doing sewing instructions. And we already have a good chunk of materials from our previous works as well. So we're gonna assemble all that from what we've done in our sewing patterns and in our books, and just put that into the ultimate guide to sewing your own t-shirt. So you will be able to really find this book super helpful without just the sewing pattern, just the fact that you will get also so much detailed instructions with a lot of professional techniques and stuff like that, which some of the home sewing patterns sometimes miss, like getting that extra perspective and or really nailing all those tricky bits that the garment industry do so well, but it's not intuitive for us home sewers. So you're gonna get a lot of industrial methods, applied to home sewing as well. So it's going to be like a real t-shirt Bible. That's the plan. And of course, if you're listening, you might think, oh, when is this book going to be out? We have no idea. Well, it will happen. Rest assured. So the plan is to start working on this fall, because as I mentioned in the previous episode, I'm also taking a break from my day job for 6 months. So one of the reasons I'm doing that is to be able to actually get going with this book. And so my part is going to be writing all the instructions and things like that. And we haven't really talked about this, Malena, but I think we should also add some fitting stuff, at least. So it's good, So, I mean, of course, our book Fit for Knits is going to be like the definite guide. We won't be able to cover that much in this book, but we can definitely, do some more of the like fundamental alterations. I could definitely think that could be valuable. So if you don't have our other book.
Yeah, and also, again, like this is us talking ideas now out in the air. But we have talked a little about this, about like how you can alter the pattern yourself to make it your own. Like, for example, it's super easy to hack and make sleeve cuffs and cuff at the bottom, and then you get a sweatshirt out of your the Raglan t-shirt, for example, and the oversized t-shirt. So it's not just like these 4 different patterns. It's like, and then you can do these easy hacks and how you do them then, and so you can get like so many different variations, because that's what I'm really like passionate about. Like, you as a home sewist, like you can take one pattern, but you can create whatever with it. Like you can alter it, you can do things yourself. Like we're gonna have rounded neckline, but how do you do if you want to have a V-shaped neckline? So like you can really personalize the patterns and the garments, and that's really something I'm looking forward in this book. Like, how to make that sharp, nice V-neck, and like how to make those nice neckband in the neck so the overlock seam is not visible. I have never done that like myself, so I'm really looking forward to those like sewing details, like how to really level up your sewing.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because we have bounced a few ideas as well, and also maybe how to add like a puff sleeve, or how to cut and spread your sleeve and add volume. So we have a few ideas bouncing on that as well, and I definitely think it's going to be more. And if you are listening and have some ideas on pattern hacks that you would like to see us illustrate in the book, definitely drop us a note either on our Instagram account, Stitching Tales Pod, or our YouTube channel, Stitching Tales Pod, or you can also email us at stitchingtalespod with 1D at gmail.com. And all this information is, of course, in the show notes as well, because that's definitely going to be really exciting. I think we're going to have a lot of ideas kind of like popping up now when we start working with the book on all the things you can do as a pattern hack that you can do. You don't really need like a special pattern for it. It's very easy to just figure it out for yourself. So we have that's also where a few of the ideas that we kind of like dropped could also manifest itself in as a pattern hack instead. So that's really, I think it's very exciting and a good way to give the book even more life and more use. So you can definitely, I mean, and the great thing also is that this book will pretty much be timeless, because I think hopefully we have managed to identify, the 4 typical styles, and they never really go out of style. Sometimes more close-fitting silhouette is more popular than oversized, and vice versa. But, if you go back to this book in 10 years' time or 20 years' time, you will still see that all the silhouettes will work. It's just a, matter of preference, or of course your own personal preference as well, which I think is a good approach to doing a sewing pattern book, because you have to think about sustainability as well. I mean, you want the stuff that you do to stand the test of time, so you don't feel like you don't want to use the book anymore. I mean, if you make an investment, and you will be able to hopefully use this book in 10 years times or 20 years times. And also, as Malena mentioned, getting your good basic tee right, and then you can just adapt and do different type of adaptations. Some might not even be in our book, but you might figure them out yourself that you just want to add with the help of our patterns. Yeah,
because I mean, having a good basic pattern block that you can vary yourself, I mean, it's so fundamental, because otherwise you basically have to restart a little bit to get the fitting right for every single new pattern that you buy. So learning a little bit of a pattern construction and pattern hacking, it can be so valuable. And a lot of things, like, it's not that hard, to be honest. So probably we can really show that in an easy way what you can do.
Yeah, and we also have a nice little debate going on, right? That we would love to hear your input on as well, because me and Malena, after we've done our podcast recordings, we usually chat a little bit, and I think maybe it was that or when we had a book meeting, but we had a disagreement, I should say. It wasn't a huge argument. It was a very.
It's funny because we had the same thing about the Fit for Knit books, and then it was like the illustration. Which color should the right side and the wrong side of the fabric be? Should it be like lighter on the inside or darker on the inside? I feel like it's a little bit the same thing here.
It's the same thing, yeah. And that, I think that argument I won, so to speak, in quotation marks. I think the majority said that I was right, that we should use a lighter color on the reverse side. And I think you bought the argument because usually you place text and markings and you show a lot of sewing steps are showed with the reverse side facing up because that's a lot of sewing is done. So it makes sense to have a lighter color there because it's for like illustration purposes. But we realized that we can identify it was like a European and maybe a North American tradition, and that was opposite. So yeah, but we settled on that one. And then we managed, as you say, another disagreement. And this time I have to say that I lost that argument because the majority has spoken. So should you leave a little bit? People are probably curious now why we ended up having this disagreement. What was the topic, Malena?
Yeah, no, the topic was how wide should the seam allowance be for a knit pattern. And I am a strong believer in the 1 centimeter. Like that's what I'm used to, and that's what I like. Like what is it? 3/8
inch.
3/8 inch, yeah.
Mm.
And what with did you want?
I feel very strongly, very, very strongly about having a 6 millimeter seam allowance, or which is 1/4 of an inch. And the reason why I love it so much is because then I can just align the knife on the serger, so I don't have to trim any fabric. So I know it's going to be exactly 6 millimeter, and because at least my serger only goes up to 7.5 millimeters, so I can't do like a 1 centimeter wide, and I'm a little bit OCD about that. And I feel like if I'm cutting, I can't be sure that I cut exactly 4 millimeters because the serger is crazy; it goes all the way. And the second argument that I had for the 6 millimeter seam allowance is that if you only have a sewing machine and want to use the sewing overlock, that seam is about 5 to 6 millimeters wide because it overlocks the edges. So if you're gonna use that seam, you need to trim away 4 millimeter of the seam allowance if you're using 1 centimeter. So I thought I had a pretty good case, but Malena,
the public has spoken. We did a poll on our Instagram stories, and it was funny because sure, we probably have quite same following, but the percentage was pretty equal on both, and it was like a little bit over 60% preferred to have 1 centimeter, and 30 something preferred the 6 millimeter, and then there were a few that prefer something else. So yeah, the majority wants 1 centimeters, and like why? I think that is a good thing. No, but I've been taught when I started to sewing in when I was 13, 14 years old and was in school, in the home economics. I don't know what you call the classes, but anyway, my teacher explained it's good to cut off a little bit of the edge because then it doesn't get so stretched out when you sew with a serger. I have no idea if this is true. This is just what my teacher told me, but that I have kept in my mind since then basically. So I like to trim off the 3-4 millimeter from the edge just to make it super crisp, clean, and it also feels like a little bit more. That you have a little bit of not wiggle room, but it's not so close to the sewing edge. You have a little bit of a space to cut the notches, and it's not it's not so close, so little margin. So yeah, I've always preferred to have 1 centimeter. And well, it was interesting because both your audience and my audience it was that 35-65-ish on both. So 1 centimeter it is.
Yeah. Yes. So if you have any opinions, and also would love to hear your preference as well, and also why you think 1 centimeter, or if there's anyone here left here like 6 centimeters. Unfortunately, we cannot accommodate that. But
I mean, if it's to speak from the truthfully from the heart, like as a pattern maker, I would prefer to have none. Like I don't want to have any seam allowance on my patterns. So then the customer can choose themselves to add however much they want, because if you don't have any seam allowance, then it's so much easier to have control of if you do any pattern alterations, to measure how if the seams are aligning or not, and it's just so much easier to control and do things with your patterns when you have no seam allowance. Like the seam allowance is the last thing you add on, like it's something automated basically in the pattern program. Like I only work with the sewing line. But yeah, I mean, I've listened to the customers. Like I think I saw like again an Instagram poll on like, do you prefer with or without seam allowance? Like 95% said that with seam allowance, obviously. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm in the minority here. So I didn't like even try to swear that we should do it without seam allowance, because I knew like, okay, that one I'm gonna lose. Yeah,
and I totally get you. And also, I think we mentioned this previously. If you're not from Europe, listening to this podcast, it's in Europe historically we've never had access to patterns with seam allowance. That was a thing that came with, I think, US companies back in the days, so like Simplicity and Buttricks, those older patterns. And still to this day, for instance, Berda magazine, which is a big brand, obviously, both the Berda sewing patterns and the magazine, which is a German-based company, they still don't have seam allowance, at least in the magazine. So that's how we grew up. And also all the sewing pattern books that we had when we were young, because they have been around with a long time, they never had any seam allowance. So for us, that isn't as crazy as it might sound for someone who maybe ventured into sewing later on, or comes from a country where seam allowance is often included. So for us, that it is something that we would consider, right? Because Malena, as you say, doing alterations is trickier when the seam allowance is already added, and we do show in our book Fit for Knits on how to accommodate the fact, and how to remove figure out where the seam line is and everything. But yeah, it's definitely something that I feel like it's gonna slowly move away, even here in Europe. The fact that having sewing pants without seam allowance, because it does add some extra time, especially. I mean, that's the. I'm honestly, when it comes to tracing, I'm a little bit over adding seam allowance at this point, because I've done it now for 40 years, and I feel like I'm happy to have a break from it. So that you don't have to worry. We will keep on adding seam allowance both to our own sewing pads and in the book.
Yeah, and I mean, I totally understand the convenience when you just have your patterns and just cut along the edge. Like I totally understand that. I have done like a compromise on my patterns. So I have some files are just with the like only seam allowance, but then I have also a file that includes both the seam allowance and the seam line, like a sewing line, in different layers. So you could you could use whatever you want, just because like I couldn't let it go completely. So I was okay. I can compromise in that sense. So like I have both. I didn't want to let the seam line go.
I'm like in my head now already thinking, could we offer that on the digital files maybe, just as an extra service?
I mean, I would be happy.
Yeah. Of course, on the printer file it's going to be impossible, because it's going to be too many lines. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's also the scary part with why I don't include it in all my PDF files. Like I only have the seam allowance line on most of the files. If you open up and you have with a program that shows all the layer from the beginning, it's a mess. Like it's so many lines. Like it's so difficult to. And if somebody accidentally just prints that one out is like, it's gonna be really tricky. So that's why I'm like a little bit like trying to make it bulletproof. Like you have those files when you don't, if you accidentally have all the layers open, like it wouldn't, you can still work with it if you print everything out. So, but yeah, it has been a big like, where do I stand? How do I want to do it?
Yeah. I love these kind of topics because we can definitely like talk so much about it, and you know there are definitely pros and cons with everything, and that's also why I love talking about this project. I mean, so far not a single book page has been produced. We should be fully transparent about that. So the patterns, you know, they are on their way, and Malena has done fantastic work with that, but the good part about being so transparent and open about this, because we can have these discussions together with you that are listening to our podcast and following us on social media and everything, because that's the way we can actually make sure that this book actually caters to the needs of you who are sewing, which is why I always talk about the books in a very early stage, because they definitely get improved just because we have these discussions. Now we are discussing it together, but we're also talking with you who are listening to this podcast episode, because it's such a tricky, there are so many small and big decisions that can definitely like really make a big difference at the end result, and we want to make sure that we create such a easy, frictionless experience for you, that when you get the book and you're sewing our patterns, that you're going to have like the best possible experience. And we have lots of thoughts about that. For instance, one idea that I had, you think we're going to be able to solve, is the fact that when you do it in the garment industry, on the neckband, you don't place the neckband seam aligned with the shoulder seam. You place it about 1 inch back, which is about 2.5 centimeters, because that hides the neckband, so it's not really visible. And it also doesn't add a lot of extra bulk, because if you have all the seams at the same place, you know, it's going to be more tricky to sew, and, you know, the serger might slip and everything. But it can be a little bit tricky, because then you have to like spread because the neckband is always smaller than the neckline. You have to like divide equally, and it can be a little bit tricky. So what I do actually is I use a calculation and add notches, so it's going to be easy. And we had an idea that we could be able to do that right for the neckband, so we're going to make it easy to just... You've done it? Oh! I think...
That was the most tedious work
Oh, you've already done it. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you did it. But yeah, I think... I will say, I hope that everyone is really sharing on Malena now, because this is going to be such a game changer. Your neckband... Neckband is going to look so much better, because let's be honest, that's probably the single trickiest step when you're sewing a knit top or a t-shirt, right? Is to get the neckband evenly spread around the entire neckline. Wow, Malena, a big share to you.
No, but the most annoying part was like it was such annoying work, is because like, okay, this is like a little bit nerdy now with the different computer programs that you use, but the program Lectra Modaris that I have, there are 2 versions of it, and I have the license Lectra Classic. And the reason also why I'm like, well, when you presented this idea, like the same evening, I was starting to look through my library and starting to create, because my license is expiring in 8 days. So it's like, yeah, the clock is ticking. Like, if I want to get this done now, while I still have the license. But so that's why I'm rushing out with the pattern now. And the program is really like, it's great for pattern making, because you can calculate things very easily. Like, you can measure the neckline, and then you can make a calculation in the program. Like, okay, so I want this notch to be on the neckline, then to be 75% of the front neckline of that length. And then you get all those measurements, and you can, this is the annoying part in the classic version, you then make the notch on the neckline, and then you grade like manually for each size. You have all the numbers, so it's just like typing in for every single size. And as we said, we are going to have up to size from 32 to 60, which is like, I think it's 15 sizes So it was a lot of typing, and you know when like it's so easy to just mistype something, so it's just like making sure that you're measuring the right one, and yeah. And the annoying part is that there are also this program called Expert, Lectra Expert, and then you have the same measurement for that front neckline, for example, and then you just link, you call it, like link that measurement to the neckline and write in the formula 75%, and magically it just goes 75% on that front neckline in all the different sizes. And let's say you change the neckline a little bit, then you drop the front neckline on the bodice, and then magically the neckband automatically changes as well. This doesn't happen in the version that I have, the classic one. Then you manually need to change everything. So that was the tedious work. Like, I know that this could have been done in like 2 minutes if I had the other program, but it is insanely expensive. Like, I can't afford that for myself. Like, no. So yeah, now I had to manually sit every single notch, every single size, like write which different grading. So now I'm just like, fingers crossed. I'm gonna try this out in Clo and just see that everything aligns, because in Clo it's 3D program. You can sew it up on an avatar, fit it in the computer and see. So I'm gonna just like double check that everything is correct. But yeah, I did it.
Wow.
It has been done.
Wow. I wish we had some sound effects, because they're going to say, wow, wow. And this is the reason why I love working with Malena. One of many reasons, because this attention to detail and that like workhorse mentality. I
also need to say, we have 2 different neckline for each style. Yes. So like a one tighter, a little bit more like a crew neck, like the one I'm basically wearing right now, and a little bit lower one as well. And so it's 2 neckline for each style. And then, of course, neckband, I mean, we have talked about this a lot. It really depends on what kind of fabric you have. So you can't, like, one pattern fits all. No. It depends on the fabric you have. The most common ones, like a rib, then you can have like 75% of the neckband. Or if you have a little bit stiffer fabric, then it's like 85%. Again, like this could also vary from 60% to 90%. Like, it really depends on the fabric. But so yeah, 2 different necklines, 2 different. Then I did the 75% and 85% with. It has been a lot of neckbands, let me tell you. A lot of notches.
So if you never have to do another notch or a neckband in your life, right, you'll be a happy camper. But
yeah, no, it makes me appreciate working with the expert version of the program even more. It was like, this is so easy. This is so easy. And it's a formula, so it is correct in every size. Like when I manually need to type in, you know how easy it is to mistype something.
Yeah,
so yeah,
so stressful,
new appreciation for the other program.
We fingers crossed that this book is going to be a massive bestseller, so Malena can afford to get like expert license.
That would be the dream.
But I think, if you listen to this is also why you should definitely get this book, because we're going to offer like next level stuff, because we want to ensure, because that's why we're doing so much work up front now, because we know and understand that even sewing a simple t-shirt can be tricky. So that's why we're putting, I should say Malena, all the effort here.
Oh, but I know that the sewing instruction is going to be like meticulous. So yeah, it's going to be, you're going to do your part as well. I know that.
Okay, thank you. But so yeah, but that's why I think we're both very similar that way, because we really like to like take everything, like consider everything and just make sure that we do the best we can with everything we do. And that's why it's so fun to work with you, because I think we have a similar mentality in that regard.
Yeah, no, it's so funny, and but it's with different things. So like mine with the getting all the numbers right. There I'm like such a perfectionist. Then it's like language, whatever, as long as people understand. But then you come in, I was like, no. No, we need to make this correctly. So we complement each other in a really beautiful way.
Yeah, we really do that, and yes, like you did all this. I can like spend days and days just perfecting technical illustrations for every single sewing step because I want to like make sure that every single step is very clearly illustrated. So I'm basically trying to teach myself to do it like in traditional, like old school sewing book styles, like doing illustrations, because that's where I like get my like mojo, you know, really thinking both when it comes to words and illustrations to make sure that you can really follow it easy. So we are really a match made in heaven. I guess we could say that. So, and I hope, as you can hear in our voices, how excited we are about this project. So we're definitely gonna do more episodes about this and update you, everyone, on the progress, and of course show previews and everything like that. And we're also gonna take some really nice photos. We're gonna do like really high-end fashion, and of course model the garments on different sizes, everything. So we have lots of big plans for this book when it will come out, because once we get started, I think we get a better idea on how long it's going to take. So anything else, Malena, that we should mention about this project? Because we talked 45 minutes now.
Yeah, no, but it's going to be really interesting to hear what you guys, the listeners, what do you think about this? Is it something that you would like? Because I mean, when is it in our own little bubble in creating stuff, it's so valuable to hear outside opinions as well. So we can, I mean, since we are in such an early stage, we can pivot so easily. So yeah, it's so valuable to get feedback from you. So that I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, same. Yes, very much. It's definitely going to be a collaborative effort, and that's why it's nice to share some progress as well, moving on here, and of course maybe show you some samples of stuff that we're working on, so we get really excited about that as well once we have finished everything. So that's really the working title is To a T, subject to change, perhaps. I have no idea. But I think it's a pretty good working title at least, and then it's going to have some subtitles as well. Yeah, so very excited to finally be able to talk about it actually openly, instead of being like, oh, we have this project we're going to work on this fall. All right then. Well, I think that was about it for this episode. So again, you will find us on all the channels. Links are of course in the description section. And I hope that you are excited about this, and thank you so much for following along this bookmaking journey. I am Johanna Lundström.
And I am Malena Hjerpe. Bye!
Bye-bye!